right, everybody, let us begin by setting up our note-taking stuff and our Bibles. Today, we're gonna do a simple Bible reading session, just like the one we did last week. If you didn't see that one, you can go and check it out. But it's very simple. I'm basically just going to read my Bible and then just taking some notes on this notebook and then just going over them in my other Bible journaling just to do a little bit more of artsy stuff. But still, we are looking up the book that we're going to be reading today, and that's going to be Proverbs. Last time we read Proverbs 4, I think, and this time we're going with Proverbs 12. So same thing as usual, I'm just going to read off my Bible a little bit, some of the verses that I particularly liked. So we're starting over with the first two verses of the chapter. It says, "Whoso loveth instruction loveth knowledge, but he that hateth reproof is brutish. A good man obtaineth favor of the Lord, but a man of wicked devices will he condemn." And then we're going to jump over to verse 11 that says, "He that tilleth his land shall be satisfied with bread, but he that followeth vain persons is void of understanding." And then all the way to verses 14 and 15, it says, "A man shall be satisfied with the good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hand shall be rendered unto him. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkened unto counsel is wise." And then we read verse 22 that says, "Lying lips are abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight." And jumping all the way down to verse 28, it says, "In the way of righteousness is life, and in the pathway thereof there is no death." I did forget to mention that I am reading off the King James Version of the Bible. You guys can read whichever version you like. I just grew up memorizing the scripture from the King James, so whenever I read a different version, it kind of doesn't make much sense to me. Not that I understand King James totally, because it has a very old English translation and some words are kind of interesting. In the end, I don't think it matters what version of the Bible you use. As far as I've heard, the King James Version, it's kind of like the closest to the original version, like the original actual script. But who knows? It's been many years and it's gone through so many different translators that I don't know which one is the closest one, but this one at least has been my favorite so far. Alright, and now that we have read our scripture, we are going to take some notes. If you guys saw my previous video, you saw that I was using this method that I randomly found on Pinterest. It's called S.O.A.P, or that's the acronym at least, and it stands for Scripture, Observation, Application, and Prayer. So I just write this little scheme over here in my notebook, and then I'm going to go over the verses that I highlighted in my Bible when I was reading the actual scripture. As per usual, I use a lot of different colors. I'm definitely not that creative, but we don't have to make a big deal out of it. I just like the different colors because it makes it more lively and it just makes me feel more into it, if that makes sense. I guess it doesn't sometimes, but I just like the notebook to have a lot of color, and that way sometimes it helps me remember like what I wrote, or it helps me to relate it back to the verse. So anyway, we are starting off with our note-taking. I'm first going to notate down Proverbs 12:11 just because it reminds me of how work definitely brings results, and some of the things I wrote were the fact that work will always pay us back. We will not be left in hunger, as the verse says, that we will not lack bread, because God is going to bless hard work. One who does not work and just hangs out with like laziness and stuff is not gonna have the satisfaction even of having knowledge or getting out there and knowing what's in store for them. We always are expected to work hard, and I know it's easier said than done, but the application to that would be to remember that that is why we always have to give our best. Overall, I think it is a great reminder that we not only work because of obligation or even because of gratitude, but we work because there is a result. We are going to be rewarded if we work, as Colossians says, heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. We definitely want to put that focus on the fact that we're working, yes, but first because he gave us that to do, so it's out of obedience, but also out of love and gratitude that he has given us a way to get the things that we want. And I'm not only talking about this economically or financially, but even in our spiritual lives, there's so much work that we can do every day on trying to better ourselves, and that's not going to come without a reward. It can be hard and it can be tiring, but in the end, it's going to be so worth it. Alright guys, and moving on, the next verse that I'm going to write about, it's going to be Proverbs 12:14-15. Just because I believe that what we say matters, right? And specifically because of what it says, that a man shall be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hands shall be rendered unto him. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearken unto counsel is wise. And it's very true. What we say for sure has a huge impact. No matter what we think about it, we always want to think of our audience and what they are hearing us say, whether it be your friends or the people in the street. It does matter a lot what we say, because our mouth basically is the testimony of our own lives, what we believe, right? And these days, people are so encased, I'd say, in their own way of thinking, that, as it says here, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes. Even if they're wrong, even if they are doing something that they're not supposed to, or, anything at all that goes contrary to what we know is right, but once we think it's okay and we are too proud to admit that we might be wrong, then to us it might sound okay. It might be like, oh, it's not too bad, or it's not gonna happen to me, etc. And definitely it says that he that hearkened unto counsel is wise. And that means, listen to those who advise you. Obviously, know who their advice is coming from, but whoever just tells you, like, hey, watch out for that, especially, like, for example, our parents, right? If they tell you, like, be careful with that, watch out for this, and that, right? And we sometimes think inside our heads, like, that's not happening to me, but until what point are we being foolish and not hearkening to that counsel? Is it not better to just, like, okay, just admit that, yeah, you probably are right, I should just watch out for that? Maybe not in a very extreme way of what they're telling us, but just overall trying to be mindful of those things that especially our elders are advising us to do, because obviously they've had more life experience. And the very last verse I added here was Proverbs 12:28, which said, in the way of righteousness is life, and in the pathway thereof there is no death. I was thinking about this in the way of how Jesus made us righteous, because obviously we could not be as righteous as this so that there is no death in our paths, but we already have that sacrifice from him and that gift. And since he was righteous, now we can be righteous as well and live outside of that fear of death. Well, I finished going over my notes, but I wanted to get a little bit more of insight just in case there was something that I missed. So I'm going over this commentary that I found online. It is called Enduring Word, and it is just like an app I downloaded on my iPad. So you just look for the chapter that you're in, and it kind of gives you a little description. It goes verse by verse. Sometimes they will have like little excerpts from other pastors, even missionaries and great men of God, of what they have added, of their own thoughts and meditations about these verses. So I really like it because sometimes it does have interesting things in there that helps us go more in depth. For example, one of those phrases I found was, "The proud person is Satan's throne, and the idle man his pillow. He sits in the former and sleeps quietly on the latter." And I just thought that was a very good description of what we were just saying, of those proud people or the foolish person that the verse says, where we think that our way is okay, even though others are telling us it's not. Anyway, so it was some phrases like that I found in there, so I'm going to write them down on a little sticky note so that I can put it later on in the Bible. That way I can remember about it whenever I read the verse again. For the actual Bible journaling, as you know, I'm not an expert, so this is going to be the color that I use for most of my highlighting. I usually pick about 3 colors. I try to make it like a little theme in there, but it doesn't always work. Here are some of the other spreads I've made, but we're going to go with verse 12 or chapter 12. So with the green one, I'm highlighting like all the recompenses and all the good things that happens to the person that obeys. And then with the dark blue, I'm going to go over those consequences, right? And the things that will go wrong if we don't obey. And later, I will probably use the yellow one to highlight the last verse, where it talks about righteousness and no death, just because I think it represents Jesus. And every time I'm thinking or reading something about Jesus, I like to highlight it with yellow. I don't know, it just seems so much brighter. I will put the little quote that I wrote in the sticky note there, and then I will also write some other things like, righteousness equals life, just because I also read something in the commentary very interesting about how in this day and age, people are saying like doing good is overrated, doing good is boring. It definitely is like a jail because you are not allowed to do so many things that you ordinarily would like to. And they're not wrong if they're referring to actual religion, right? That religion that doesn't come from the heart, that it's just complying with a duty instead of doing it because of love, right? And it's super important to me, at least, to see the difference between that. Am I doing this? Am I even reading the word and praying all of it just because I am in a religion, or because I actually do mean it, right? So that's also part of that righteous living, that you always want to make sure we're doing it, we're walking in the right path, basically, because not only has Jesus given us the power to do so through his death, because he was the only perfect one that had actual righteousness, but also that we're doing it because we want to obey and ultimately get that reward that we were talking about earlier, right? Through the hard work. Alright, you guys, and I believe that was pretty much it for my Bible journaling session today. I am very satisfied with all the notes that we were able to take, just because I will be applying this, or trying at least to apply it during this week, that I have a lot of things to work on, and I really hope that I can work on them with the heart and to the Lord, knowing that he will give the reward. And thank you so much for watching. I hope that you were able to follow along reading some of these wonderful scripture verses. I'm very thrilled that you guys are liking these videos. I'll try to make more, because for sure we don't want to pass out the opportunity to learn about God and what he has to say in his word. So just let us continue in this journey. Here is the final overview of what I did. And I believe that's everything for today, y'all. Have a good day and take care.